My husband thought he was being subtle when he slipped the white powder into my champagne glass while I was in the restroom. He did not know I was watching him through the crack in the decorative partition. He also did not know that 30 seconds later, I would switch my glass with his mother's. The same mother who had just spent the last 2 hours calling me gutter trash in front of half of Atlanta's elite. What happened next was not just a disaster, it was a revelation that would burn their entire dynasty to the ground. Before I tell you how I destroyed 3 lives in one night, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to serve karma ice cold. I am Simone, 32 years old, and tonight was supposed to be a celebration. 5 years of marriage to Marcus, a man I thought was a king, but who turned out to be a court jester in a designer suit. We were at Bacchanalia, one of the most exclusive restaurants in Atlanta. The kind of place where the tasting menu costs more than my father's first car, and the silence is so heavy you can hear the ice melting in the crystal buckets. I sat there in my emerald silk gown, trying to keep my posture straight, while my mother-in-law, Beatrice, dissected my existence with the precision of a surgeon. Beatrice was 60, wearing a Chanel suit that probably cost $20,000, and a string of pearls that had belonged to her grandmother. She looked at me with eyes that were cold and dead, like a shark. "You know, Simone," she said loud enough for the table of bank executives next to us to hear, "green really is not your color. It highlights the yellow undertones in your skin. It makes you look like you are suffering from jaundice. Or perhaps it is just the lighting in here. It is so difficult to dress appropriately when one does not have the breeding for it." I took a sip of water and smiled. I was a forensic accountant. I spent my days hunting down hidden assets and exposing corporate fraud. I knew how to keep a poker face. I knew Beatrice hated me because I came from Bankhead, not Buckhead. She hated that I worked for my money instead of inheriting it. She hated that I did not belong to the Jack and Jill Club or the right sorority. "Thank you for the fashion advice, Beatrice," I said, my voice calm. "I will keep that in mind." Beside me, my husband Marcus swirled his cognac. He did not defend me. He never defended me. He just checked his watch and tapped his foot nervously. On his other side sat Chloe, his sister-in-law. Chloe was 28, white, and possessed a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. She was married to Marcus's younger brother, but tonight she was sitting uncomfortably close to my husband. Chloe reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope, sliding it across the table to me. "Happy anniversary, Simone," she chirped. "I got you a little something. It is a voucher for Dr. Stein in Buckhead. He is a miracle worker. He did my nose and my chin. I told him about you, and he said he could do wonders for your profile. You know, just to refine things a bit so you fit in better with the family photos." Beatrice let out a short, cruel laugh. "Oh, that is thoughtful, Chloe. Simone certainly needs all the help she can get. God knows we have tried." I looked at the voucher. It was an insult wrapped in a gift bow. They wanted me to carve up my face to look more like them, to look less like me. I felt the familiar burn of humiliation in my chest, but I pushed it down. I excused myself to go to the restroom, needing a moment to breathe before I said something that would cause a scene. The restroom was down a dimly lit corridor lined with abstract art. I fixed my makeup in the mirror, staring at my own reflection. "You are successful," I told myself. "You own your own firm. You paid off your parents' mortgage. You are worth more than all of them combined." I walked back towards the private dining room but stopped just before the entrance. Through the decorative wooden lattice, I had a clear view of our table. Beatrice was busy inspecting her reflection in a compact mirror, putting on more lipstick. Chloe was texting on her phone, smiling at the screen. And Marcus. Marcus was looking around nervously. I watched as he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small paper packet. With a quick flick of his wrist, he dumped a white powder into my champagne flute. The powder fizzed for a microsecond and dissolved. My heart stopped. My own husband. The man I had vowed to love and cherish. He was drugging me. I did not know what it was. Poison. A sedative. Something worse. His eyes were cold, detached. There was no love there, only calculation. He stirred the drink with his pinky finger, then wiped it on a napkin. He sat back and signaled for the waiter to bring the check. He was planning something. I could feel it in my bones. I had two choices. I could run in there, scream, and call the police, but it would be my word against his. He was a respected real estate developer. I was the angry wife from the wrong side of tracks. Or I could play the game. I took a deep breath and walked back into the room. My face was a mask of pleasant neutrality. As I approached the table, fortune smiled on me. A waiter passing by tripped slightly, bumping into Marcus's chair and spilling a drop of red wine sauce near his elbow. Marcus exploded. "You idiot, watch where you are going. Do you know how much this suit costs? Get a manager over here now." While Marcus was screaming at the terrified waiter, and Chloe was leaning away to avoid the splash, and Beatrice was looking at her reflection in the mirror again, I made my move. My glass and Beatrice's glass were identical, both crystal flutes filled with vintage Dom Perignon, both sitting just inches apart on the white tablecloth. With a hand steady from years of auditing terrifying men, I reached out. In one smooth motion, I slid my glass to the right and pulled Beatrice's glass to the left. It took less than a second. Nobody saw. The waiter was apologizing. Marcus was ranting. Beatrice was blotting her lips. I sat down and pulled the clean glass toward me. I looked at Marcus. He was done yelling now. He turned to me and his face softened into a fake smile that made my skin crawl. He picked up his cognac. "To 5 years," he said, raising his glass. "To patience, and to the future." I picked up my glass, the one that had been Beatrice's. I looked at Beatrice. She picked up the glass that had been mine, the glass with the powder. "To the future," Beatrice said, her eyes mocking me. "May you finally learn your place in it." We clinked glasses. I brought the rim to my lips and pretended to sip, watching over the crystal rim. Beatrice took a long swallow, draining half the glass in one go. She loved expensive champagne almost as much as she loved cruelty. I set my glass down untouched. The clock in my head started ticking. 10 minutes passed. The conversation turned to the upcoming charity gala at the church. Beatrice was the chairwoman. She loved the power. She was talking about how she was going to ban certain members for not meeting the donation threshold. I watched her closely. At first it was subtle. She started sweating. Not a glow, but a sheen of perspiration on her forehead. She fanned herself with a menu. "Is it hot in here?" she snapped at the waiter. "Turn up the air conditioning. I am roasting." "It is 70 degrees, ma'am," the waiter said politely. Beatrice glared at him. "Do not talk back to me. I know when I am hot." Then her eyes started to dilate. I saw the pupils expand until her eyes were almost entirely black, swallowing the iris. She blinked rapidly, shaking her head as if trying to clear a fog. Her speech began to slur just a little at first, clipping the ends of her words. Marcus was looking at me. He was waiting for me to pass out, waiting for me to make a scene. He kept glancing at my glass, then at my face. Why is she not reacting? His eyes seemed to ask. He did not look at his mother. He did not care about her. He only cared about the plan. 20 minutes passed. The drug hit Beatrice like a freight train. She suddenly slammed her hand down on the table, making the silverware jump. Everyone stopped eating. Beatrice let out a low, guttural laugh that sounded nothing like her usual polished titter. It was the laugh of someone losing their grip on reality. "You are all staring at me," she said, her voice loud, booming. "Why are you staring? Do I have something on my face?" She rubbed her cheek, smearing her expensive lipstick across her chin like war paint. Mother Marcus said, frowning. "Are you all right? You seem a little flushed." Beatrice turned to him. "Shut up, Marcus. You always were the weak one. Just like your father, spineless. You cannot even make your own money. You have to steal it from your wife." The table went deadly silent. Marcus's face drained of color. Beatrice stood up, but her legs were wobbly. She swayed, grabbing the tablecloth for support and pulling a breadbasket onto the floor. "Beatrice," Chloe said, reaching out a hand. Maybe you should sit down. You do not look well. Beatrice swatted Chloe's hand away with surprising strength. Do not touch me, you white trash. I know what you are. You think you are so special because you have blonde hair and blue eyes. You are nothing. You are a parasite. Chloe gasped, clutching her pearls. Beatrice, what are you saying? I am saying I know about you. And Marcus. Beatrice screamed. She climbed onto her chair, her heels digging into the velvet upholstery. I know you two were sleeping together before you married his brother. I know you still do it. In my house. In my guest room. I hear you. Here. The entire restaurant was looking at us now. Waiters were freezing mid-step. Diners at other tables were pulling out their phones. Beatrice did not care. The drug had stripped away every layer of social inhibition, leaving only the raw, ugly truth underneath. She stepped from the chair onto the table. Her foot landed in a platter of roasted duck, sending grease and sauce flying. She kicked the platter, and it sailed through the air, hitting Chloe square in the chest. Sauce dripped down Chloe's white dress like blood. Chloe screamed a high-pitched shriek of horror. Mom, get down! Marcus yelled, standing up and trying to grab her. You are making a scene! Beatrice looked down at him like a goddess of vengeance. A scene. I will give you a scene. I am Beatrice Washington, and I own this town. I own the mayor. I own the police chief. And I own you. She pointed a shaking finger at me. And you little rat. You think you are so smart with your numbers and your spreadsheets? My son is going to take everything you have. We have a plan. We are going to lock you up and throw away the key. I sat there perfectly still. I reached into my purse and tapped the record button on my phone. This was it. This was the moment. Beatrice was confessing. It was the drug talking, but truth serum is truth serum. Beatrice started to dance, a grotesque, disjointed jig among the crystal glasses and fine china. She was laughing hysterically now, tears running down her face. The spiders, she screamed, suddenly clawing at her neck. Get them off me! The spiders are eating my pearls! She ripped the pearl necklace from her neck. The string broke and dozens of pearls rained down onto the table, bouncing into wine glasses and soup bowls. Get them off, she shrieked, tearing at her clothes. She ripped the sleeve of her Chanel jacket. She was hallucinating. The drug was potent. Marcus grabbed her ankles, trying to pull her down. Stop it, mother, stop it! Security. The manager was running toward us, followed by two large men in suits. Get her down! She is destroying the restaurant! Beatrice kicked Marcus in the face. Her heel caught him on the cheekbone, drawing blood. Back off, she roared. I am the queen. You cannot touch the queen. The security guards did not hesitate. They grabbed Beatrice by the arms and hauled her off the table. She thrashed and bit, screaming obscenities that would make a sailor blush. She called the manager a racial slur. She called the security guard a peasant. They dragged her toward the exit, her feet dragging on the floor, her expensive shoes falling off one by one. Marcus looked at me. His face was a mask of pure terror. He looked at my glass, which was still full. He looked at his mother's empty glass. The realization hit him. His eyes went wide. He knew. You, he whispered. You did this. I looked at him, my face calm, my voice steady. I did what Marcus. I sat here and ate my dinner. Your mother seems to be having a reaction to something. Maybe she is allergic to the truth. You poisoned her, he hissed, grabbing my wrist. Let go of me, I said, loud enough for the manager to hear. Or I will add assault to the list of things the police will be interested in tonight. Marcus let go. The manager was glaring at us. Get out, he said. All of you. Now. And you are paying for the damage. We walked out to the parking lot. It was chaos. Beatrice was leaning against Marcus's Bentley, vomiting violently onto the pavement. Chloe was crying, trying to wipe duck sauce off her dress. A crowd had gathered, filming with their phones. Call an ambulance, I said, pulling out my phone. No, Marcus shouted. No police. No ambulance. We are taking her home. She just had too much to drink. She is hallucinating about spiders. Marcus, I said, dialing 911. That is not alcohol. She needs a hospital. And she needs a toxicology screen. Marcus lunged for my phone. Do not call them. I stepped back. It is already ringing. Hello, yes, I have a medical emergency at Bacchanalia. My mother-in-law has ingested a substance and is having a psychotic break. She is violent. Yes, please send help immediately. Marcus stared at me with hatred. He knew what a toxicology screen would find. He knew it would show the drug he bought, the drug he put in the glass. Why are you doing this? He asked, his voice trembling. I smiled. Because, Marcus, I am a good daughter-in-law. And family takes care of family, right? The sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Beatrice was on the ground now, sobbing about the spiders. Chloe was sitting on the curb, ruined. And Marcus looked like a man who was watching his life end. This was just the beginning. The ambulance arrived, its lights flashing red and blue against the night sky, illuminating the disaster of what was supposed to be a quiet anniversary dinner. The paramedics rushed toward Beatrice, who was now curled in a fetal position on the asphalt, muttering about demons and pearls. Marcus tried to intercept them. She is fine, he stammered, wiping sweat from his forehead. She just had a bad reaction to some medication. We can take her home. We have a private doctor. One of the paramedics, a tall woman with a no-nonsense expression, pushed past him. Sir, she is convulsing and hallucinating. We are taking her to Grady Memorial. That is protocol. Grady. Marcus looked horrified. That was the public hospital, the trauma center. It was where the poor people went. It was also where the police had a permanent station and where drug testing was standard procedure for intake. No, take her to Emory or Piedmont. We have insurance. We have money. We take her to the nearest level 1 trauma center, the paramedic said, lifting Beatrice onto the stretcher. Step aside, sir, unless you want to be arrested for obstruction. Marcus stepped back, defeated. Back. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for the first time. Simone, tell them. Tell them to take her somewhere private. We can fix this. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had tried to drug me to make me look crazy, so he could steal my money and my dignity. I adjusted my silk wrap around my shoulders. The paramedics know best, Marcus. We should follow the law. I climbed into the back of the ambulance with Beatrice. Not because I cared about her, but because I needed to ensure that the chain of custody for her blood work remained unbroken. Family only, the paramedic said. I am her daughter-in-law, I said, my voice trembling with fake concern. I am her medical proxy. My husband is too distraught to ride. Marcus watched the doors close. He was left standing in the parking lot with a hysterical Chloe and a bill for thousands of dollars in restaurant damages. As the ambulance sped away, I looked down at Beatrice. She was strapped down, her eyes rolling back in her head. You really should have been nicer to me, Beatrice, I whispered. The night was long. The police took my statement. I played the part of the horrified wife perfectly. I cried a little. I expressed shock that my husband could be involved. I handed over the video I had taken of Beatrice's meltdown. This will be evidence, the officer said. Thank you, ma'am. You might have saved her life by getting her here so fast. I nodded. I just did what anyone would do. By 4 a.m., Beatrice was stable but sedated. Marcus had been released pending further investigation, but his passport had been confiscated. I walked out of the hospital into the cool night air. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. We need to talk. I know what you did. I smiled. Chloe was next. But first I needed to get home. I needed to open Marcus's safe. I needed to find the money he had stolen. And I needed to prepare for the war that was coming. I hailed a taxi. To Buckhead, I said. And step on it. As the city lights blurred past, I felt a strange sense of peace. The mask was off, the game was on, and for the first time in 5 years, I held all the cards. They wanted a show. I would give them a blockbuster, but there was still the matter of the insurance policy, and the mortgage fraud, and Chloe's little secret. I closed my eyes and began to plan. The devil's toast was just the appetizer. The main course was going to be their total destruction. and I was starving. The fluorescent lights of the Grady Memorial Emergency Room hummed with a sound that felt like it was drilling directly into my skull. It was a stark, sterile contrast to the soft golden ambiance of the restaurant we had just fled. Here, there was no crystal, no velvet, and certainly no mercy. The air smelled of antiseptic, floor wax, and the metallic tang of dried blood. I sat on a hard plastic chair in the hallway, my emerald silk gown pooling around me like a spilled drink, drawing stares from exhausted nurses and patients waiting for care. I did not care about the stares. My entire focus was on the closed door of Trauma Room 3, where my mother-in-law Beatrice was currently strapped to a gurney, screaming about spiders eating her pearls. Marcus paced back and forth in front of me, his Italian leather loafers squeaking on the linoleum. He had taken off his jacket and sweat had soaked through his dress shirt. He looked like a man who was watching a carefully constructed dam burst, searching desperately for a way to plug the holes with his fingers. He kept glancing at me, his eyes darting with a mixture of fear and calculation. He was wondering how much I knew. He was wondering if I had seen the powder. He was wondering why I was so calm. I checked my watch. It was 2 a.m. The adrenaline that had carried me through the switch at the restaurant was beginning to curdle into a cold, hard rage. I watched him pace. I knew exactly what he was thinking. He was running numbers in his head, calculating the cost of bribes, the cost of lawyers, and the cost of silence. The door to the trauma room opened, and a weary-looking doctor stepped out. He was young, with dark circles under his eyes, but his expression was grim and authoritative. He held a clipboard in his hand. Marcus stopped pacing immediately, rushing toward him. "Doctor, how is she?" Marcus asked, his voice pitching too high. "Is it food poisoning?" "It must be food poisoning. The duck at that restaurant was questionable. We are going to sue them." The doctor held up a hand to stop him. "Mr. Washington, your mother is stable, but she is heavily sedated. We had to administer a strong benzodiazepine to counteract the psychosis. However, we have the results of the toxicology screen." I stood up slowly and walked over to stand beside Marcus. I wanted to see his face when the hammer dropped. "It is not food poisoning," the doctor said, his voice lowering. "We found a significant concentration of scopolamine in her blood." Marcus flinched as if he had been slapped. "Scopolamine." "Yes," the doctor continued, looking back and forth between us. "It is often referred to as devil's breath. It is a deliriant. In high doses, it renders the victim highly suggestible, compliant, and often induces vivid, terrifying hallucinations. It is not something you get from bad duck, Mr. Washington. It is something that is administered, usually with criminal intent." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. I looked at Marcus. He was pale, his mouth slightly open. He knew exactly what scopolamine was. He had bought it. He had carried it in his pocket. And he had intended it for me. The compliance. The loss of free will. He did not want to kill me. He wanted to control me. He wanted me to sign papers. He wanted me to hand over the keys to my kingdom while I smiled and nodded, a zombie in a silk dress. "That is impossible," Marcus stammered, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. "My mother would never take drugs. Someone must have spiked her drink at the bar. It is a dangerous city. We were targeted." The doctor narrowed his eyes. "Be that as it may, this is a police matter now. We have preserved the samples, and the report will be filed with the investigators. You should expect them to want to speak with you again." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "Thank you, doctor. Please do whatever is necessary to ensure my mother-in-law is safe. We want the truth, no matter how ugly it is." The doctor nodded at me, appreciating the cooperation, and turned to head back to the nurses' station. Marcus watched him go, his hands balling into fists at his sides. He turned on me, his eyes wild. "You," he hissed. "You did this. You switched the glasses." I raised an eyebrow. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Marcus. I just wanted to enjoy my anniversary. It is not my fault your mother cannot handle her liquor or whatever else she is into." He looked ready to strike me, but the presence of a security guard down the hall kept him in check. He took a deep breath, smoothing his hair. "Stay here," he ordered. "I need to handle this." He walked quickly toward the nurse's station, where a middle-aged nurse was typing data into a computer. I watched him. I knew Marcus. He thought money could fix anything. He thought everyone had a price. I waited a moment, then followed, staying close to the wall, my footsteps silent. I saw him lean over the high counter, flashing that charming real estate smile that had fooled me 5 years ago. He spoke in a low, conspiratorial whisper, but I was close enough. I had spent years listening to whispers in boardrooms, catching executives in lies they thought were private. "Excuse me, miss," I heard Marcus say. "There has been a terrible mistake with the paperwork. My mother, she is a very prominent woman in the church. This diagnosis, this drug business, it would kill her reputation. It would destroy her." The nurse looked up, her face impassive. "The chart reflects the lab results, sir. I cannot change the lab results." Marcus reached into his wallet. He pulled out a thick stack of cash. I saw the edges of $100 bills. He slid his hand along the counter, covering the money with his palm. "I am not asking you to change the lab results," he whispered. "I am just asking for the official discharge summary to be a little more vague. Metabolic imbalance, severe dehydration, something that preserves her dignity. There is no need for the police to be involved in a family accident. This is for your trouble, for your discretion." The nurse looked at the money, then at Marcus. She hesitated. That hesitation was all Marcus needed. He pushed the money closer. It was a lot of cash. Enough for a car payment. Enough for rent. That was my cue. I stepped out from the shadows, my heels clicking sharply on the floor. I did not yell. I did not make a scene. I walked up to the counter and placed my leather card holder down next to Marcus's hand. It landed with a heavy, authoritative thud. I flipped it open. My credentials gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Certified Forensic Accountant, State Board of Fraud Examiners. "Good evening," I said, my voice cool and professional. "I am Simone Washington. I am the patient's daughter-in-law. And I am also a federally certified auditor specializing in institutional fraud." The nurse's eyes went wide. She pulled her hand back from the counter as if it were red hot. Marcus froze, his hand still covering the bribe. I continued, looking directly at the nurse. "I understand my husband is under a great deal of stress. He is not thinking clearly. But I am. If that chart is altered in any way, if a single decimal point is moved, or if the diagnosis is changed from scopolamine to dehydration, I will personally launch an audit of this entire department. I will subpoena every log, every email, and every bank account associated with the staff on shift tonight. I will make sure you not only lose your license, but that you are prosecuted for tampering with medical evidence in a criminal investigation." I paused, letting the weight of my threat settle. "Do we understand each other?" The nurse looked terrified. She pushed her chair back. I was not going to take it. I am entering the data exactly as the doctor dictated. Scopolamine. It is in the record. It is locked." "Good," I said. I pulled out my phone. "I would like a copy of that face sheet and the toxicology report right now. For my records. As the primary insured party on her policy, I am entitled to it." The nurse scrambled to print the documents. She handed them to me with shaking hands. I took them, scanned them with my eyes to ensure the drug name was clearly listed, and then snapped a high-resolution photo of each page, uploading them instantly to my secure cloud server. I turned to Marcus. He looked like he had seen a ghost. His hand was still on the counter, covering the cash. "You can put that away, Marcus," I said. "We are done here." He shoved the money back into his pocket, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred and awe. He had never seen me work. He had only seen the wife who cooked dinner and nodded at his stories. He had never seen the woman who took down CEOs for breakfast. "We need to talk," he said, his voice raspy. "Not here," I replied. "I am going to sit with your mother. You look like you need to make a call." He glared at me, then spun on his heel and stormed off down the hallway toward the family restrooms. I watched him go. I knew he was not going to the bathroom to wash his face. He was going to call the one person who knew the plan. He was going to call his lawyer. I waited until he turned the corner, then I moved. I kicked off my heels, holding them in my hand so I could move silently. I followed him down the long, empty corridor. He pushed open the door to the large, single-occupancy family restroom. I heard the lock click. The restroom was next to a janitor's closet and a row of vending machines. There was a small alcove between the restroom door and the water fountain, a blind spot hidden by a large potted plant. I slipped into the alcove, pressing my back against the cold wall. The restroom door was heavy, but the ventilation gap at the bottom was wide, and the hospital was quiet at this hour. I heard Marcus pacing inside. I heard the beep of his phone dialing, then his voice, echoing slightly against the tile. "Pick up, pick up, pick up," he muttered. Then, a sigh of relief. "Arthur, it is me. Wake up. We have a massive problem." I held my breath, clutching my phone to my chest, the voice memo app running. "Plan A failed," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "She did not drink it. I do not know how, but she switched the glasses. My mother drank it. Yes, Beatrice, she is in the ER. She is psychotic. The police are involved. They found the scopolamine." He paused, listening to the person on the other end. "No, Arthur, you do not understand. Simone knows. She cornered the nurse. She threatened an audit. She has copies of the medical records. She is not the stupid little girl from the projects we thought she was. She is dangerous." I closed my eyes, a tear leaking out. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was easy prey. "No," Marcus snapped. "We cannot wait. The interest payments on the Bitcoin loans are due next week. If I do not get access to her accounts, I am dead. Literally dead. Those loan sharks do not play. I need that conservatorship. The word hung in the air like a blade. That was the plan. Drug me. Make me look insane in public. Get me committed. Then petition the court for control of my assets because I was mentally unfit. It was the same playbook they used on pop stars and aging heiresses, and he was going to use it on me. "We need to pivot," Marcus said, his voice desperate. "I need you to draft a petition for an emergency psychiatric evaluation. We will say she has been acting erratically for weeks. Paranoia, mood swings. We will say she drugged my mother in a fit of jealous rage. Yes, that is the angle. She tried to poison Beatrice because she thinks Beatrice hates her. We spin it that she is a danger to herself and others. I need that judge to sign off on a temporary hold by Monday morning." He paused again. "Yes, I can get witnesses. Chloe will say whatever I tell her to. My mother will back me up once she is lucid. We just need to isolate Simone. Get her away from her files, get her away from her money, Once she is in the system, no one will listen to her. She will just be another crazy black woman ranting about conspiracies." I felt a cold fire ignite in my belly. Another crazy black woman. That was his bet. That the system would see my skin and my gender and ignore my credentials and my truth. He was banking on bias. He was weaponizing the very system I worked to protect. "Do it, Arthur," Marcus said. "File the papers first thing. I will handle her tonight. I will get her home. I will make sure she does not leave my sight. By Monday, she will be in a padded room, and I will have power of attorney." He hung up. I heard the water running. He was splashing his face, composing himself, getting ready to come out and play the loving, concerned husband again. I stopped the recording. I saved the file. I emailed it to myself, to my lawyer, and to a secure backup server. Then I put my shoes back on. I walked back to the waiting area and sat down, crossing my legs. I smoothed my dress. I checked my makeup in my compact. I looked perfect. I looked sane. I looked like a woman who was about to go to war. When Marcus came back, he looked calmer. He had a plan. He thought he was in control. "Ready to go?" he asked, his voice tender. "The doctor says Mom will sleep for hours. We should go home and get some rest. We can come back in the morning." I looked at him. I smiled. It was the smile of a predator looking at a wounded gazelle. "Of course, darling," I said. "Let's go home. I have so much to do." He offered me his arm. I took it. His skin felt clammy. We walked out of the hospital into the humid Atlanta night. He thought he was leading me to my prison. He did not know he was walking into his own execution. The evidence in my pocket felt heavy, like a loaded gun. Monday was 2 days away. A lot can happen in 2 days. And I was going to make sure that by Monday morning, the only person in a cell would be him. The Bentley pulled into the circular driveway of our Buckhead estate. The house loomed in the darkness, a massive structure of limestone and glass that I had paid for with the sweat of my brow and the precision of my mind. It was supposed to be my sanctuary. Now it looked like a mausoleum. Marcus put the car in park and turned to me. His face was a mask of concern, but the cracks were showing. The stress of the night, the impending financial doom he was trying to hide, and the sheer effort of maintaining his lies were taking a toll. "You need to rest, Simone," he said, reaching out to tuck a stray hair behind my ear. His touch made my skin crawl, but I did not flinch. I leaned into it. I needed him to think I was broken. I needed him to think the trauma of seeing his mother psychotic had rendered me fragile and compliant. "I am so tired, Marcus," I whispered, letting my eyelids droop. "I just want to sleep. I want to forget tonight ever happened." He nodded, relief washing over his features. "Go upstairs. Take one of those sleeping pills Dr. Arrington prescribed for your anxiety. Knock yourself out. I have to run out for an hour. I need to meet with Arthur to discuss damage control for Mom's reputation. We need to get ahead of the press before morning." It was a lie, of course. He was going to meet Arthur to finalize the paperwork to have me committed. He needed to sign the affidavits while I was asleep. "Okay," I said softly. "Do not be long. I do not want to be alone." I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing into the humid Atlanta night. As soon as the gate clicked shut, I dropped the act. The exhaustion vanished, replaced by the cold, sharp clarity that made me the best forensic accountant in the state. I did not go upstairs to the master bedroom. I went straight to his study. The study was Marcus's domain. It was paneled in dark mahogany and smelled of cedar and the expensive cigars he smoked to look important. It was the command center of his delusions. I locked the door behind me and turned on the desk lamp. I did not need to search the drawers. I knew Marcus. He was arrogant, but he was not messy. The real secrets would be in the wall safe hidden behind the large oil painting of himself that hung above the fireplace. I swung the painting aside. The safe was a heavy digital model. Top of the line. I stared at the keypad. This was the moment of truth. Most people use dates for passwords, birthdays, anniversaries, graduation dates. It is human nature to anchor our secrets to the things we love. I tried our anniversary. June 10th. The light flashed red. Error. I tried his birthday. Error. I tried his mother's birthday. Error. I paused. I closed my eyes and thought about the man I had married. Who did he love? Who did he value above all else? It wasn't me. It wasn't his mother. It wasn't even himself. Not really. It was the person who validated his worst instincts. The person who conspired with him. I typed in 4 digits. 0824, August 24th, Chloe's birthday. The light turned green. The heavy steel bolts retracted with a mechanical thud that sounded like a gunshot in the silent house. I pulled the door open. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady. Inside were stacks of cash, a few watches, and a thick leather binder. I bypassed the cash. Cash is fleeting. Paper trails are forever. I pulled out the binder and carried it to the desk. I opened it, and the story of my husband's betrayal spilled out in black and white. The first document was a life insurance policy. It was issued by a major carrier, dated just 2 months ago. The coverage amount was $5 million. The insured was Simone Washington. The primary beneficiary was Marcus Washington. I ran my finger down the clauses. It was a standard policy, but there was a rider attached. Double indemnity for accidental death, and a clause that allowed for the accelerated payout in the event of permanent cognitive incapacitation. Incapacitation. That was the scopolamine. He did not need me dead. He needed me vegetable. He needed me locked away in a facility, drooling and incoherent, so he could cash out the policy to pay his debts while playing the grieving, devoted husband. It was monstrous. It was calculated. And it was signed with a forgery of my signature that was so good it would have fooled anyone but me. I took a picture. I turned the page. The next document was a mortgage statement. My breath hitched. I had paid off this house 3 years ago. I wrote the check myself. It was the proudest moment of my life. But the paper in front of me told a different story. It was a statement for a home equity line of credit, a HELOC. It had been taken out 18 months ago. The principal amount was $800,000. The current balance was $850,000. He had not made a payment in 4 months. The house, my house, was in pre-foreclosure. He had forged my signature again. He had leveraged the roof over our heads to fund... what? I flipped the pages frantically until I found the investment prospectus. Apex Coin, a cryptocurrency startup based in the Cayman Islands. It was a Ponzi scheme. I knew it instantly. I had audited a firm last year that got caught up in the same scam. Marcus had dumped nearly $1 million of stolen equity into a digital black hole. The money was gone, vaporized. He was broke. He was worse than broke. He was underwater, and the sharks were circling. That explained the desperation. That explained why he couldn't wait for a divorce settlement. He needed liquid cash, and he needed it yesterday. I took more pictures. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like ice in my veins. He had stolen my security. He had stolen my home. I turned to the back of the binder. There was a section labeled Expenses. It was a stack of bank statements from a shell company called MW Holdings. I recognized the name. It was the entity Marcus used for his real estate deals. I scanned the outgoing transfers, monthly wires of $5,000. The recipient was listed as C. Miller Consulting, Chloe Miller, $5,000 a month, every month for the last 2 years. While he was telling me the market was down, while he was asking me to cover the utility bills because his cash flow was tight, he was funneling $60,000 a year to his sister-in-law. And then I saw the credit card statements. The American Express Centurion card that he told me he had canceled. The charges were obscene. The Four Seasons in Miami, Cartier, Louis Vuitton. A plastic surgery clinic in Buckhead, the same doctor Chloe had recommended to me at dinner. He paid for her nose job. He paid for her chin implant. He paid for the breasts she flaunted at family barbecues. He molded her. He bought her. I stared at the numbers. Numbers do not lie. People lie. People say they love you. People say they are building a future with you. But numbers tell the story of where the heart really lives. And Marcus's heart lived in a ledger of greed and lust that had nothing to do with me. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. I did not have time to grieve the marriage. I had to bury it. I pulled a USB drive from my pocket. I always carried one. A forensic accountant is never off duty. I plugged it into his laptop, which was sitting on the desk. I guessed the password on the first try. Chloe again. It was pathetic. I cloned the hard drive. Emails, chat logs, financial software backups. I took it all. I found a folder labeled The Project. I opened it. It was not a real estate development. It was a timeline. Phase 1. Isolation. Notes on how he had slowly cut me off from my friends over the last year. Phase 2. Destabilization. Gaslighting techniques. Moving my keys, hiding my files, making me doubt my memory. Phase 3. The event. The anniversary dinner. Phase 4. Conservatorship. It was a business plan for my destruction. He had treated the dismantling of my life like a project management exercise. I ejected the drive and put it in my bra. I put the binder back in the safe. I wiped my fingerprints from the desk, the keyboard, and the safe door. I swung the painting back into place. I stood in the center of the room and looked around. This house was not a home anymore. It was a crime scene. And I was the lead investigator. I checked the time. He had been gone for 45 minutes. He would be back soon. I needed to be upstairs. I needed to be the sleeping victim. But as I turned to leave, I saw something on the corner of the desk that I had missed. It was a small velvet box, the kind that holds jewelry. I opened it. Inside was a diamond tennis bracelet. It was stunning, easily 10 carats, and there was a note tucked under the velvet cushion. To Chloe, for being my partner in crime. Soon, baby. Soon we will have it all. M. He had bought her a victory present, with my money, to celebrate my commitment to a mental institution. I snapped the box shut. I put it in my pocket. This would be useful. I went upstairs to the bedroom. I changed out of my gown and into silk pajamas. I messed up the bedsheets to look like I had been tossing and turning. I placed the bottle of sleeping pills on the nightstand, taking one pill out and flushing it down the toilet so the count would be right if he checked. Then I lay down in the dark. I listened to the silence of the house. I thought about the man I had married 5 years ago. I thought about the vows we had exchanged, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. He had broken every single one. He had tried to make me sick to make himself rich. I heard the garage door open, the rumble of the Bentley engine. He was back. I closed my eyes and slowed my breathing. I heard his heavy footsteps on the stairs. I heard the bedroom door creak open. He walked to the side of the bed. I could feel him looming over me. I could smell the stale cigar smoke and the nervous sweat on him. He stood there for a long time, just watching. "Sleep tight, Simone," he whispered. "Enjoy your last night of freedom." He walked into the bathroom and closed the door. I opened my eyes in the darkness. "No, Marcus," I thought. "You enjoy yours." I had the evidence, I had the motive, I had the means. But I wasn't done. I needed to neutralize his allies. I needed to sever the limbs of this beast before I went for the head. Chloe was the weak link. She was greedy, she was vain, and she was careless. She was the one who had accepted the money. She was the one who had slept with her husband's brother. And tomorrow, she was going to walk right into my trap. I rolled over and stared at the moon through the window. It looked sharp and cold like a scythe. Tomorrow I would play the confused, fragile wife one last time. But underneath the silk pajamas, I was wearing armor. And when Chloe arrived to pick over the bones of my life, she was going to find out that this carcass still had teeth. The morning sun filtered through the silk drapes of the master bedroom, but it brought no warmth. I lay in bed listening to the silence of the house. Marcus had left early. He claimed he had urgent business at the office, but I knew he was meeting with his lawyers to finalize the paperwork for my commitment. He thought I was upstairs in a drug-induced haze. He thought I was broken. I checked my phone. I had a text from Chloe sent 30 minutes ago. It said, "I'm coming over to check on you, sweetie. I am bringing soup." I smiled at the ceiling. Soup. It was the oldest trick in the Southern Handbook. Bring a casserole or a pot of soup so you have an excuse to get inside the house. Chloe was not coming to comfort me. She was coming because Marcus had sent her. He needed my American Express Centurion card. The black card. It was the only source of unlimited credit I had, and he knew the PIN because I had trusted him once. He needed it to pay off the interest on his loans before the sharks came for his knees. I got out of bed and dressed. I chose a simple white lounge set. It made me look pale and fragile. I brushed my hair but left it loose. I wanted to look like a woman who was holding on by a thread. I went downstairs and placed my purse on the kitchen island. I made sure the clasp was undone. I made sure the edge of the black titanium card was just barely visible. Then I waited. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Chloe stood there holding a Tupperware container. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a tracksuit that cost more than my first car. She looked tired. Her skin was splotchy. The stress of the night before had taken a toll even on her expensive facial work. "Simone," she said, her voice thick with fake sympathy. "Oh my God, look at you. You look exhausted." I stepped back to let her in. "I am okay, Chloe. Just confused. Everything is so fuzzy." She walked into the kitchen and set the soup down. "I am sure it is. Marcus told me everything. He is so worried about you. He thinks you might be having a breakdown." I leaned against the counter, hugging my arms around myself. Maybe I am. I do not remember anything from last night. I just remember Beatrice screaming. Chloe flinched. "Yeah, well, Beatrice is stable now. Marcus is handling everything. He sent me to make sure you were eating, and to see if you needed anything." She was scanning the room. Her eyes landed on my purse. I saw the greed flare in her pupils. It was hungry and desperate. "I need some tea," I said, rubbing my temples. "My head is pounding. Do we have any chamomile?" "I think it is in the pantry," Chloe said, helpful as ever. "Why do you not go look? I will heat up this soup for you." I nodded and walked into the walk-in pantry. I closed the door, but I did not latch it. I left a crack open just wide enough to see. As soon as I was out of sight, Chloe moved. She did not go to the stove. She went straight to the island. She reached into my purse. Her hand was shaking. She pulled out her phone first and snapped a picture of something inside the bag, probably to prove to Marcus she had found it. Then her fingers closed around the black card. I kicked the pantry door open. It slammed against the wall with a loud bang. Chloe jumped. She dropped the card. It clattered onto the marble countertop. I walked out, my face devoid of the confusion I had feigned moments ago. "Looking for something, Chloe?" She stammered, backing away. I was looking for a tissue. I thought you had some in your bag." "A tissue," I repeated, picking up the black card. "You needed a tissue made of titanium." "Simone, please," she said, her voice rising in pitch. "Marcus asked me to get it. He said you needed him to pay the hospital bills for Beatrice. He said you were not in a state to handle finances." I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "The hospital bills, is that what he told you? Or did he tell you he needs to pay off the bookies before they break his legs? Or maybe he needs to make the lease payment on that Porsche he drives? Or maybe he needs to pay Dr. Stein for your neck surgery?" Chloe froze. Her face went white. "What are you talking about?" I walked around the island, closing the distance between us. "I know, Chloe. I know everything. I know about the money. I know about the plastic surgery. I know about the monthly transfers to C. Miller Consulting." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "That is a lie. I do consulting work for him. I help with interior design on his flip properties." "Interior design," I said. "Is that what we are calling it now? Is that what you were doing at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami last month, designing the interiors?" She stopped breathing. The air left the room. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a high-resolution printout. I unfolded it and slammed it onto the counter next to the soup. It was a photo taken from the hotel security feed. I had a friend in Miami who owed me a favor. The image was crystal clear. It showed Marcus and Chloe standing at the check-in desk. His hand was on the small of her back. Her hand was resting on his chest. They were looking at each other with a hunger that had nothing to do with real estate. Chloe stared at the photo. She made a small choking sound. "I also have the room service receipts," I said. "Champagne, oysters, massage charges. It was a very expensive weekend, Chloe, especially since you told your husband you were visiting your sick aunt in Tallahassee." Chloe looked up at me. Her face was a mask of terror. Please, she whispered. Please, Simone. If David sees this, he will kill me. He will take the kids. He will leave me with nothing. I know, I said. David is a good man. He works hard. He loves you. And you are sleeping with his brother. His brother who is stealing from his wife to pay for your lifestyle. I leaned in close. You are a parasite, Chloe. You and Marcus deserve each other. You are both empty, broken people who try to fill the void with money you did not earn. She started to sob. I am sorry. It just happened. Marcus, he makes me feel special. He listens to me. He buys you, I corrected. He buys your loyalty. He buys your silence, and he buys your body. But the bank is closed, Chloe. I cut off the money. I froze the accounts this morning. That card you tried to steal. It is a paperweight. I reported it lost an hour ago. She looked at the card on the counter. Then she looked at me. What are you going to do? Are you going to tell David? I picked up the photo and tapped it against my chin, pretending to think. That depends on you. What do you mean? I mean, I need a friend, I said, using the word like a weapon. I am all alone in this big house. My husband is trying to have me committed. My mother-in-law is in the hospital. I need someone on my side. I will do anything, Chloe said, desperate. Anything. Just do not show David. Good, I said. Here is the deal. You are going to be my eyes and ears. Marcus trusts you. He thinks you are his partner in crime. You are going to keep it that way. She nodded rapidly, wiping her nose. Okay. Okay, I can do that. Every time he makes a move, I want to know. I said. If he talks to a lawyer, I want to know. If he moves money, I want to know. If he plans to plant drugs in my car or hire a doctor to lie in court, I want to know before he hangs up the phone. I understand, she said. And there is one more thing, I said. What? I reached into my pocket again. I pulled out the velvet box I had found in the study. I opened it. The diamond tennis bracelet sparkled in the morning light. Chloe gasped. Her hand went to her mouth. It is beautiful. It is. I agreed. 10 carats. Flawless. He bought it yesterday. She reached for it, mesmerized. For me. I snapped the box shut. Yes, for you. A victory present. For helping him destroy me. She looked at me, confusion clouding her eyes. I am going to keep this, I said, putting the box back in my pocket. You can have it when this is over, if you do your job, if you help me bury him. But he loves me, she whispered. I laughed again. He does not love you, Chloe. He loves that you are weak. He loves that you are easily bought. He loves that you make him feel like a big man when he is really just a thief. If he loved you, he would leave me. He has not left me because he needs my money, and now he does not have it. I picked up the photo from the counter. I held it over the open flame of the gas stove. I am going to keep a digital copy of this, I said. And if you lie to me, if you miss a check-in, if you try to warn him, I will email it to David. I will email it to your parents. I will email it to every member of the church choir. Do you understand? Yes, she sobbed. Yes, I understand. Good. Now take your soup and get out of my house. Tell Marcus I was sleeping. Tell him you could not find the purse. Tell him I looked pathetic and weak. She nodded, backing away toward the door. She looked small and defeated. The arrogance was gone. Oh, and Chloe, I called out as she reached the door. She turned back, tears streaming down her face. If you ever touch my things again, I will not just ruin your marriage. I will sue you for theft. And unlike Marcus, I have the money to pay for the best lawyers in the state. She fled. I heard her car start in the driveway and speed away. I stood in the kitchen alone. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I had turned his greatest ally into his greatest liability. I had a spy in the enemy camp. I looked at the stove. I turned off the burner. I did not burn the photo. I folded it and put it back in my pocket. I would never burn leverage. I went to the fridge and poured myself a glass of cold water. My throat was dry. The game was escalating. Marcus was going to come home soon. He was going to be angry that Chloe failed. He was going to be desperate. I needed to be ready. I needed to be the perfect victim for just a little longer. I went back upstairs. I changed back into my pajamas. I messed up the bed again. I lay down and closed my eyes. But before I drifted off, I sent a text to my lawyer. Phase 2 is complete. The rat is in the cage. Get the divorce papers ready. I want him served on Sunday. At church. I smiled into my pillow. Sunday was going to be a holy day indeed. The air in the private hospital room was thick with the scent of stale flowers and expensive perfume trying to mask the underlying odor of disinfectant. It was Friday morning. Beatrice had been awake for 2 hours. I sat in the corner chair clutching my purse to my chest, looking like a woman who had not slept in days. Which was true. I had not slept. I had been planning. Beatrice was sitting up in bed. She was wearing a silk robe that Marcus had brought from home because she refused to wear the hospital gown. Her hair was wrapped in a scarf, but her face was exposed. It was a ruin. The makeup was gone, leaving behind the gray pallor of a woman who had ridden the devil's breath all the way to hell and back. She was holding an iPad. Her hands were shaking. On the screen, a video was playing on loop. It was the video I had taken. But it was not just on my phone anymore. It was on TikTok. It was on Instagram. It was on the local news blog. I watched her watch herself. In the video, she was kicking a platter of duck. She was screaming about spiders. She was calling Chloe names that would get you banned from polite society for a generation. The view count was climbing by the second. 2 million views. 3 million. The caption read, "The Real Housewives of Atlanta Uncensored." Beatrice let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She threw the iPad across the room. It hit the wall with a crack and slid to the floor. "You did this," she hissed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You filmed it. You posted it. You ruined me." I widened my eyes, feigning shock. "Beatrice, I only filmed it to show the doctors. I wanted them to know what was happening so they could save you. I do not know how it got online. Maybe a waiter took it. Everyone had their phones out." "Liar," she screamed. Her voice was raspy from the intubation tube they had removed hours ago. "You did this. You did it because you are jealous. You are jealous of my standing. You are jealous of my son. You are jealous that you will never be one of us." Marcus stepped out of the bathroom. He looked fresh. He had showered and changed into a new suit. He looked like a man who was ready to close a deal. He walked over to the bed and put a hand on his mother's shoulder. "Calm down, Mother," he said soothingly. "Raising your blood pressure will not help. We know what happened." He turned to me. His eyes were hard. "We know what you did, Simone. We know you spiked the drink." I stared at him. The audacity was breathtaking. He was taking the crime he committed and wrapping it around my neck. "I do not know what you are talking about," I said, my voice trembling just the right amount. "Marcus, you saw her. She was hallucinating. The doctor said it was scopolamine. Where would I get scopolamine?" Marcus sighed, the sound of a patient man dealing with a hysterical child. "Do not insult our intelligence, Simone. We found the search history on your laptop. We found the receipt in your car. You bought it online. You have been planning this for weeks. You wanted to humiliate Mother. You wanted to make her look incompetent so you could take over the charity committee. It was such a stupid lie. The charity committee. As if I cared about their social climbing circle. But it was a narrative they could sell. The jealous daughter-in-law. The outsider trying to destroy the matriarch. That is not true," I whispered, squeezing tears out of my eyes. "I love Beatrice. I would never hurt her." Beatrice sneered. "Love. You do not know the meaning of the word. You are a parasite. You married my son for his money. And now you try to destroy his mother." Marcus sat down on the edge of the bed. "Look, Simone. We are at a crossroads here. The police are asking questions. The hospital has the toxicology report. Right now they think it is an assault. They are looking for a suspect. I looked down at my hands. And what are you saying, Marcus? I am saying that we can protect you, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We can tell the police it was an accident. We can tell them Beatrice took the wrong medication. We can make this go away. We can scrub the internet. We have a PR firm ready to spin this as an adverse reaction to a new prescription. I looked up at him, hope dawning on my face. You would do that. After you think I did this. We are family, Marcus said. Family protects family, even when they make mistakes. But there is a cost, Simone. This video, this humiliation, it has damaged the family brand. It has damaged my reputation in the business community. Investors are pulling out. The bank is calling. Here it comes, I thought. The pivot. We need to stabilize the assets, he continued. We need to show the world that the Washington family is united and solvent. We need to show them that despite this episode, we are strong financially. He reached into his briefcase, which was sitting by the bed. He pulled out a thick document bound in blue paper. What is that? I asked. It is a transfer of assets, Marcus said. It transfers the controlling interest of your accounting firm to the Washington Family Trust. I am the executor of the trust. I stared at the document. My firm, my forensic accounting firm, the business I had built from nothing, the business that generated 7 figures a year, the business that was the only thing standing between me and poverty. He wanted it. He wanted to own the very entity that could expose his fraud. It was genius in a twisted way. If he owned the firm, he could bury the evidence of his embezzlement forever. Why, I asked, my voice shaking. Why do you need my firm? Because it is the only asset with liquid value right now, Beatrice snapped. Marcus's real estate is tied up in long-term investments. My accounts are frozen pending an audit because of this scandal. We need your cash flow to pay off the creditors and the PR firm. It is the only way to save us, Simone. It is the only way to save yourself. Marcus uncapped a fountain pen. He held it out to me. Sign it, Simone. Sign it, and we tell the police it was an accident. We tell the world you are a loving daughter-in-law. Refuse, and we give them the evidence that you poisoned her. You will go to prison for 20 years. Attempted murder. Is that what you want? I looked at the pen. I looked at Beatrice, who was watching me with the hunger of a wolf. I looked at Marcus, who thought he had finally won. He thought I was cornered. He thought I was weak. I let out a sob, a loud, ragged sound of defeat. I buried my face in my hands. I cannot go to prison, I wailed. I cannot. Then sign the papers, Beatrice demanded. Do it now. I looked up, my face wet with tears. Okay. Okay, I will do it. I will give you the firm. I will give you everything. Just please do not let them arrest me. Marcus smiled. It was a shark's smile. Good girl. Sign here, and initial here. I reached for the pen. My hand hovered over the paper. Then I stopped. I pulled my hand back. Marcus frowned. What are you doing? Sign it. I cannot sign it here, I said, my voice small. Why not? Beatrice barked. Because it is not right, I said. I have sinned against this family. I hurt you, Beatrice. I let jealousy cloud my heart. If I am going to give you this gift, if I am going to make restitution, I want to do it right. I want to do it before God. Marcus looked confused. God? What does God have to do with this? I stood up, pacing the small room. I need to repent, Marcus. I need to show the community that I am truly sorry. I want to sign these papers at church. On Sunday. Sunday, Marcus asked. That is 2 days away. We need this done now. Please, I begged, grabbing his lapels. Please, Marcus. The rumors are already spreading. People are whispering. If we do this in private, they will say you forced me. They will say you stole it. But if we do it at church, if we do it after the service, in front of the congregation, it will look like an offering. It will look like unity. It will restore Beatrice's image as the matriarch who forgives. It will restore your image as the head of the household. I looked at Beatrice. I knew her vanity was her weakness. Beatrice, imagine it. You standing at the altar. Me kneeling before you, handing over my life's work. The pastor blessing us. The whole congregation witnessing your triumph. It would be the ultimate vindication. They would see that you are the queen and I am just the servant. Beatrice's eyes lit up. She imagined it. I could see the scene playing out in her mind. The drama, the attention, the power. She loved the theater of church more than the scripture. She looked at Marcus. She is right. It would look better. It would stop the gossip. It would show everyone that the Washingtons are untouchable. Marcus hesitated. He was nervous about the delay. He had loans due. But he also wanted the public victory. He wanted to be seen as the man who brought his wayward wife to heel, and he was arrogant. He thought he had me. He thought 2 days would not matter because I was terrified. Fine, Marcus said. Sunday, at Ebenezer Baptist, after the morning service. We will reserve the fellowship hall. We will invite the deacons. We will make it a ceremony. Yes, I said, clasping my hands together. A ceremony. A testimony. I will give a speech. I will tell everyone how good you are to me. I will tell them how you saved me. Marcus smirked. He put the papers back in his briefcase. You better write a good speech, Simone. I want tears. I want them to believe you. I will. I promised. I will make sure there is not a dry eye in the house. Beatrice settled back into her pillows, a look of supreme satisfaction on her face. You see, Marcus, she said. You just have to know how to handle these people. Fear is the only language they understand. I looked at her. I memorized that look. The arrogance, the contempt. I would remember it when I watched her fall. I am going to go home now, I said. I need to prepare. I need to get the transfer documents ready with my secretary. I need to pray. Go, Marcus said, dismissing me. I will stay here with Mother. Do not try to run, Simone. I have your passport, remember, and I have eyes on the house. Chloe is watching. I nodded. I know. I am not going anywhere, Marcus. I am ready to do what needs to be done. I walked out of the hospital room. I walked down the long corridor. I kept my head down until I was in the elevator. As the doors closed, I let the mask drop. I wiped the fake tears from my face. Sunday. 2 days. 48 hours. They wanted a show. They wanted a ceremony at the biggest church in Atlanta. They wanted to parade me in front of the elite and strip me of my dignity and my wealth. They thought they were setting the stage for my humiliation. They did not know they were setting the stage for their own funeral. I took out my phone. I sent a text to my assistant. Get the projector ready. Get the files. And call the district attorney. Tell him I have a present for him. Tell him to be at Ebenezer Baptist on Sunday at noon. Tell him to bring handcuffs. I stepped out of the elevator into the lobby. The sun was shining outside, but my world was cold and focused. I had played the victim. I had played the fool. Now it was time to play the executioner. But first I had to survive the next 48 hours. Marcus was desperate. Chloe was volatile. And Beatrice was vindictive. They would be watching me. I had to be perfect. I got into my car. I checked the rearview mirror. My eyes were clear. My hands were steady. Let us go to church, I whispered. I drove home planning every word of the speech I would give. It would indeed be a testimony, just not the one they were expecting. I was going to testify to every crime, every lie, and every stolen dollar, and I was going to do it on the biggest screen in the house. The devil was coming to church on Sunday, and she was driving a Mercedes. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked past 9 on Saturday night. The house was quiet, but it was the silence of a held breath before a scream. I sat in the library, the darkness wrapping around me like a protective cloak. I was fully dressed in black slacks and a dark turtleneck. I looked like a cat burglar in my own home. I was waiting. My phone buzzed in my lap. The screen lit up with a single name. Chloe. I answered on the first ring. "Talk to me." Her voice was a jagged whisper barely audible over the sound of running water. She was in her bathroom again, hiding. "He is moving up the timeline, Simone. He is panicking. He just got off the phone with Arthur. They are worried the church spectacle might not be enough. They are worried you might flip the script or that Beatrice might say something crazy again." I leaned forward. "What is the plan, Chloe?" "He wants insurance. He is not waiting for the mental health hold. He wants you arrested. Tonight. Or tomorrow morning on the way to church." I felt a cold smile touch my lips. Marcus was predictable in his desperation. "And how does he plan to achieve that?" "Drugs," Chloe said. She sounded like she was choking on the words. "He made a call to a guy he used to know. A guy from the old neighborhood. He ordered a package, cocaine, a lot of it. Enough to trigger a felony distribution charge." I closed my eyes, letting the information settle. He was going to plant it. He was going to hide it in my car or my purse and then call in an anonymous tip. He wanted the police to drag me out of the sanctuary in handcuffs. It was crude. It was messy. It was exactly the kind of sloppy mistake a drowning man makes. "Where is the pickup?" I asked. "There is a gas station off Martin Luther King Drive. The one with the broken sign. 10:30 tonight." "Is he going himself?" "No," Chloe said. "He is too scared. He is sending Jerome." Jerome. Marcus's driver. A man who had been on the payroll for 3 years. A man who had driven me to gala dinners and opened my doors with a smile. Marcus was sacrificing him too. Jerome had a record. If he got caught with that amount of narcotics, he would go away for life. Marcus did not care. People were just tissues to him. Use them once and throw them away. "Thank you, Chloe," I said. "You have done well. Now go back to bed. Take a sleeping pill if you have to. Do not call Marcus. Do not warn him. If you do, I will know." "I will not," she promised. "Please, Simone, just remember our deal, the bracelet." And silence. I hung up. I sat there for a moment contemplating the chessboard. Marcus thought he was a grandmaster. He thought he was moving his knight to take my queen. He did not realize his knight was already surrounded. I stood up and walked to the garage. I did not take my car. My car had a tracker on it. Marcus had installed it 6 months ago under the guise of safety. I took the keys to the old housekeeper's sedan. She was on vacation and the car was sitting under a tarp in the back. It was invisible. I drove out of Buckhead, leaving the manicured lawns and the security gates behind. The city changed as I drove south. The streetlights got dimmer. The potholes got deeper. I knew these streets. Marcus forgot that I grew up not far from here. He thought he had rescued me from the hood. He did not understand that the hood had taught me how to survive wolves like him. I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner across the street from the gas station Chloe had described. I parked in the shadows behind a dumpster. I had a clear view. It was 10:15. I picked up a burner phone I had bought earlier that day with cash. I dialed 911. "Emergency 911, what is your emergency?" I lowered my voice, affecting a worried tremble. "Yes, hello. I am at the gas station on MLK. I think there is something bad happening. There is a man here with a gun. He is arguing with someone in a black SUV. I think they are selling drugs. Please hurry, I am scared they are going to start shooting." I gave them the description of the SUV I knew Jerome would be driving. Marcus's secondary car, a black Cadillac Escalade. I hung up and took the battery out of the phone. Then I tossed the phone into the dumpster. I waited. At 10:25, the Escalade rolled into the gas station. It pulled up to the air pump far away from the lights of the convenience store. I saw Jerome behind the wheel. He looked nervous. He kept checking his mirrors. He was a good driver, but he was a terrible criminal. 2 minutes later, a beat-up Honda pulled up next to him. A man in a hoodie got out. He walked to the window of the Escalade. I raised my camera. It was a high-end DSLR with a telephoto lens that I used for documenting asset seizure evidence. I snapped a rapid burst of photos. The exchange, the package passing through the window, The envelope of cash going the other way. Perfect. Then the sirens started. They came from everywhere. Atlanta Police Department did not play around with armed drug calls. 3 cruisers swarmed the lot, screeching to a halt and blocking the exits. Blue lights shattered the darkness. Hands in the air. Get out of the vehicle. I watched through my lens. Jerome froze. The dealer in the hoodie tried to run, but he didn't make it 3 steps before he was tackled. Jerome opened the door slowly. He stepped out, hands raised high. He looked terrified. He knew what was in that car. The officers slammed him against the hood. They searched the vehicle. It did not take long. They found the package on the passenger seat. They held it up. It was a brick. A solid brick of white powder. I zoomed in on Jerome's face. I saw the moment his loyalty broke. I saw the moment self-preservation kicked in. The officer was yelling at him. Jerome was shaking his head at first. Then he started nodding. He was talking. He was pointing. He was pointing north toward Buckhead. He was giving up the boss. I lowered the camera. I checked the photos on the display screen. They were crisp. They were damning. But the police report would be better. I started the engine of the housekeeper's car and backed out slowly, driving away before the scene could be taped off. I drove the speed limit all the way home. My heart was beating a steady rhythmic tattoo against my ribs. When I got back to the estate, the house was still dark. Marcus was likely in his study waiting for the phone to ring. He was waiting for Jerome to tell him the package was secured. He was waiting for the weapon that would end my life. I slipped back inside. I went upstairs to the guest room where I had set up my war room. I downloaded the photos. I printed them. 30 minutes later, the phone in the study rang. I picked up the extension in the guest room and pressed the mute button. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Do you have it?" It wasn't Jerome. It was a voice I didn't recognize. Hard. Official. Mr. Marcus Washington. There was a pause. A hesitation. "Who is this?" "This is Sergeant Miller with the Atlanta Police Department. We have your vehicle, a black Cadillac Escalade, in custody. The driver, a Mr. Jerome Davis, has been arrested for felony possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. "Mr. Washington, are you there?" "Yes," Marcus squeaked. "Yes, I am here. I do not know anything about that. Jerome is my driver. If he was doing something illegal, he was doing it on his own time." "That is not what Mr. Davis says, sir," the sergeant continued. "He claims he was running an errand for you. He claims you provided the cash and directed him to the location. He says he has text messages on his phone from you confirming the pickup." I smiled in the darkness. Text messages. "Marcus, you arrogance. You thought you could micromanage a felony via iMessage." "That is a lie," Marcus shouted, his voice cracking. "He is lying to save his own skin. I am a respected businessman. I am a deacon at my church. We will need you to come down to the station to make a statement, Mr. Washington, or we can send a car to pick you up." "No," Marcus said quickly. "No, do not come here. My mother is sick. My wife is unwell. I will come in the morning. I will bring my lawyer." "You do that," the sergeant said. "Do not leave town, Mr. Washington. We will be in touch." The line clicked dead. I hung up the extension gently. I could hear Marcus downstairs. He was trashing the study. I heard glass breaking. I heard him screaming into a pillow or his hands trying to muffle the sound of his world collapsing. He was cornered. Plan A had failed. Plan B had just blown up in his face and implicated him in a major drug crime. He had no leverage left. He had no moves, except one. The church. He was going to double down. He had to. The ceremony tomorrow was his last stand. If he could get me to sign the papers publicly, if he could get the congregation on his side, he might be able to use the money to pay off the police or hire a dream team of defense attorneys. He needed that signature more than he needed oxygen. He would be desperate tomorrow. He would be dangerous. But he would also be careless. I went to the mirror and looked at myself. I looked tired, but my eyes were bright. I removed my makeup. I brushed my hair until it shone. Tomorrow I would wear white. the color of innocence, the color of sacrifice. I would look like an angel walking into the lion's den. Marcus did not come upstairs that night. He stayed in the study drinking and presumably shredding documents that I had already digitized. He did not know that the police report was already being typed up. He did not know that I had a copy of the dispatch log sent to my secure email by a contact in the precinct. I had the poisoning. I had the fraud. And now I had the drugs. I had the holy trinity of a life sentence. I crawled into bed. I needed sleep. I needed to be sharp. Tomorrow was Sunday, the Lord's Day, and I was going to bring the fire and brimstone. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 5 years, I did not dream of numbers or spreadsheets. I dreamed of a gavel coming down, a sound like thunder, a sound like freedom. Ebenezer Baptist Church was not just a place of worship in Atlanta, it was a fortress of social standing. To be a member here was to tell the world you had arrived, and to be a deacon as Marcus's father was meant you were untouchable. The sanctuary was vast, a cavernous space filled with polished mahogany pews and stained glass that turned the humid Georgia sunlight into a kaleidoscope of red and gold. On this particular Sunday, every pew was full. The air conditioning was humming, but it could barely compete with the body heat of 600 people fanning themselves with church programs. They were not just here for the sermon. They were here for the show. I stood in the vestibule smoothing the skirt of my white dress. I had chosen it carefully. It was modest, high-necked, and long-sleeved, the kind of dress a penitent woman wears when she is seeking redemption. But it was also tailored to perfection, sharp and clean. It was not the dress of a victim. It was the dress of a warrior priestess. Marcus was already at the pulpit. He was wearing a white three-piece suit that cost more than the average annual income of the neighborhood outside. He looked like an angel or a televangelist selling miracle water. He was gripping the podium, his knuckles white. I knew why. He was terrified. Jerome was in jail singing to the police. The creditors were calling every hour. This service, this public signing, was his Hail Mary. He needed my assets to pay for his defense, and he needed the church's protection to keep his reputation from disintegrating before the indictment came down. To his right sat Beatrice. She was in a wheelchair, a prop she did not need but used with expert precision. She was wrapped in a shawl, looking frail and diminished, a shadow of the woman who had danced on a table 3 nights ago. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, playing the long-suffering mother to the hilt. Next to her was Chloe, looking pale and nervous. She caught my eye from across the room and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. She had done her job. The trap was set. The organ music swelled a deep vibrato that shook the floorboards. It was time. The usher opened the double doors and I walked in. The sound of 600 heads turning was like a sudden gust of wind. The whispering started immediately, a low buzz that ran through the congregation. There she is. The crazy wife. The one who poisoned poor Beatrice. I kept my head high, my eyes fixed on the cross hanging above the choir loft. I walked down the center aisle, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the carpet. Marcus saw me, and a look of profound relief washed over his face. He thought I had broken. He thought the threat of prison and the shame of the scandal had finally brought me to my knees. He smiled, a benevolent, forgiving smile that made my stomach turn. Brothers and sisters. Marcus boomed, his voice amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system. We gather here today not to judge, but to heal. The scripture tells us that love keeps no record of wrongs. It tells us that a family united in faith can weather any storm. He gestured to me as I reached the front of the church. My wife Simone has been through a dark valley. The enemy attacked her mind. The enemy tried to sow discord in our home, but today she stands before you ready to make things right, ready to recommit herself to this family and to the work of the Lord. Amens rippled through the crowd. It was a masterclass in manipulation. He was framing my surrender as a spiritual victory. I walked up the steps to the pulpit. Beatrice reached out a trembling hand as I passed. Simone, she whispered loudly enough for the front row to hear. I forgive you. I pray for you. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had called me gutter trash, who had tried to steal my mind and my dignity. I smiled. Thank you, Mother, I said, my voice sweet as poisoned honey. Your prayers have been answered. I took my place next to Marcus. He put an arm around my shoulder, pulling me close. I could smell his cologne and the underlying scent of fear sweat. He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. Just sign the papers and smile, he hissed. Do not try anything. Jerome is in a cell, but I still have friends on the outside. I pulled away gently, turning to face the congregation. I looked out at the sea of faces, the doctors, the lawyers, the business owners, the people who had snubbed me for 5 years because I didn't have the right pedigree. They were looking at me with pity now. Poor Simone. She finally cracked. Marcus signaled to his lawyer Arthur, who was sitting in the front row. Arthur stood up and walked onto the stage carrying a leather portfolio. He opened it on the pulpit, pushing aside the Bible. He laid out the document. It was thick, bound in blue paper. This, Marcus announced, is a deed of gift, a donation. Simone has decided to transfer the stewardship of her business assets to the Washington Family Trust to ensure that they are used for the glory of God and the betterment of our community. It is a symbol of her trust in me as the head of her household. He held out a gold fountain pen. Sign here, Simone. Let us put this behind us. The church was silent. Everyone was waiting. This was the climax of the play. The moment the wayward wife submitted, I took the pen. It felt heavy in my hand. I looked at the document. I saw the clauses, the legal jargon that would strip me of everything I had built. I looked at Marcus. He was practically vibrating with anticipation. He was already spending the money in his head. I looked at the microphone. I stepped forward, leaving the papers on the podium. I tapped the mic. It thumped, echoing through the hall. Marcus frowned. What are you doing? Sign it. I ignored him. I gripped the mic stand with both hands. Church family. I said, my voice clear and steady. My husband is right. The truth must come to light. The Bible says that what is done in the dark will be brought to the light. And for the last 5 years there has been a lot of darkness in the Washington home. Marcus took a step toward me, his smile faltering. Simone, this is not necessary. Just sign the papers. I turned to him. Oh, but it is necessary, Marcus. You wanted a testimony. You wanted the congregation to understand the depth of my repentance. I think they need to understand the full context first. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small remote control. It was the remote for the church's multimedia system. I had donated the system 2 years ago. I knew exactly how it worked. And thanks to my assistant, who was currently in the tech booth, I knew exactly what was queued up. Before I signed my life away, I said to the crowd, I want us all to reflect on the love that brought us here. I want to share a special moment from our anniversary dinner, a moment that shows the true nature of my husband's heart. Marcus froze. He looked at the remote in my hand. He looked at the massive LED screen behind the choir loft. A flicker of doubt crossed his eyes. He did not know about the camera footage. He thought the restaurant incident was just hearsay and memory. Simone, give me the remote, he said, his voice low and dangerous. I smiled. Watch the screen, Marcus. It is your finest hour. I pressed the button. The giant screen flickered to life. The image was crystal clear, high-definition footage from the security camera I had subpoenaed and enhanced. It showed the private dining room at Bacchanalia. It showed the table, the flowers, the crystal glasses. The congregation gasped. They recognized the setting. They recognized the people. The video zoomed in. It showed me leaving the table. It showed Beatrice preening in her mirror. It showed Chloe texting. And then it showed Marcus. The silence in the church was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear Marcus's breathing hitch. On the screen, Marcus looked around furtively. His face was twisted in a sneer of contempt. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the white packet. No, Marcus whispered. No. The video showed him pouring the powder into my glass. It showed him stirring it with his finger. It showed him wiping his hand. It showed the cold, dead look in his eyes as he prepared to drug his wife. A collective intake of breath swept through the room. Someone in the back row screamed. "That is not what it looks like," Marcus shouted, grabbing for the mic. It was sugar. It was sweetener. She likes her champagne sweet. I pressed the button again. The video cut to the next clip. It was the footage from the restaurant chaos. It showed Beatrice on the table kicking the duck. It showed her screaming about spiders. It showed her attacking Chloe. But the audio was the real killer. I had synced the audio from my phone recording to the video. "I know you and Marcus were sleeping together before you married his brother." Beatrice's voice shrieked from the massive speakers filling the sanctuary. "I know you still do it. In my house." The church erupted. It was pandemonium. People were standing up, pointing, shouting. The deacons in the front row looked like they were having heart attacks. Chloe's husband, Marcus's brother, stood up from his pew, his face a mask of horror. He looked at Chloe, who was shrinking into herself, trying to disappear. "Turn it off," Marcus screamed, lunging for me. "You crazy bitch, turn it off." I sidestepped him. I was faster. I was fueled by 5 years of rage. I pressed the button a third time. Now the screen showed documents, bank statements, large, bold numbers. "This is the Washington Family Charity Fund," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "The fund you all donate to. The fund that is supposed to feed the hungry and house the homeless." The screen scrolled. It showed transfers. $5,000 to Gucci, $10,000 to the Four Seasons, $20,000 to Dr. Stein Plastic Surgery. "And this," I said, pointing at the screen, "is where your tithes went. They did not go to the poor. They went to Chloe's nose job. They went to Marcus's gambling debts. They went to maintaining the illusion that these people are better than you." Marcus stopped lunging. He looked at the screen. He looked at his father, the head deacon, who was standing in the aisle clutching his chest. He looked at the congregation, which had turned into a mob. "You stole from the church," a woman shouted from the balcony. "You stole from God." Marcus looked at me. He was broken. The arrogance was gone. There was only naked terror. "You ruined me," he whispered. I leaned into the mic one last time. "No, Marcus, you ruined yourself. I just turned on the lights." I looked down at Beatrice. She was not faking it anymore. She was gasping for air, her hand clutching her chest, her eyes wide with the realization that her social reign was over. She had been exposed as a fraud, a mother who raised a thief and an adulterer. I dropped the remote on the podium. It landed with a finality that echoed like a gavel. "I am not signing anything," I said. "But I do have something for you." I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila envelope. I tossed it onto the pulpit. "Those are the divorce papers and the eviction notice. Get out of my house." I walked down the steps of the pulpit. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. They were not looking at me with pity anymore. They were looking at me with fear and respect. I walked down the aisle, my head high. I did not look back at the chaos on the stage. I did not look back at the husband who was trying to explain himself to a crowd that wanted his blood. I did not look back at the mother-in-law who was slumped in her wheelchair, defeated. I walked out the double doors into the bright sunlight. The air was fresh. The birds were singing. Sirens were wailing in the distance, getting closer. I stopped on the church steps and took a deep breath. It was over. The poison was out. The truth was told. I saw a police cruiser turn, the corner lights flashing. They were coming for Marcus. Jerome had talked. The video had played. The evidence was overwhelming. I walked to my car. I got in and locked the doors. I watched as the police ran up the steps of the church. I watched as they entered the sanctuary to arrest my husband on the altar of his own vanity. I started the engine. I put the car in drive. I had a flight to catch. Paris was calling, and for the first time in my life, I was going to answer. The giant LED screen behind the choir loft flickered to life. It was usually reserved for displaying hymn lyrics or announcements about the upcoming potluck. but today it was broadcasting high-definition cinema verite. The image was crisp and bright, illuminating the darkened sanctuary with a cold blue light. It showed the interior of the private dining room at Bacchanalia. The camera angle was high and wide, capturing the entire table. The congregation let out a collective gasp. They recognized the setting. They recognized the people. There was Beatrice adjusting her pearls. There was Chloe texting under the table. And there was Marcus. I stood at the pulpit watching the screen but also watching the audience. I saw the confusion on their faces turn to rapt attention. I saw Marcus freeze his hand halfway to me, his face draining of all color. He looked like a statue made of salt about to crumble. On the screen, the digital timestamp ticked forward. The video zoomed in digitally. It focused entirely on Marcus. The resolution was so high you could see the sweat on his brow in the recording. He looked around the restaurant furtively, his eyes darting left and right. Then his hand dipped into his jacket pocket. A hush fell over the church, so profound it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. 600 people held their breath at once. On the screen, Marcus pulled out the small white packet. He opened it with a quick, practiced flick of his thumb. He leaned over my champagne glass. The white powder cascaded into the golden liquid. It fizzed for a second and then disappeared. A woman in the front row screamed. It was a short, sharp sound of pure horror. The video continued. Marcus stirred the drink with his pinky finger. He wiped his hand on a napkin. And then he looked up. The expression on his face in that freeze frame was the face of a monster. It was cold. It was calculating. It was devoid of any humanity. It was the face of a man who was deciding to end his wife's life as he knew it. "No," Marcus whispered. His voice was a dry rasp that barely carried over the silence. "No, that is not real. It is a deep fake. She made it up." I pressed the button on the remote again. The video cut to black, but the audio system kicked in. The massive speakers, which were designed to amplify gospel choirs and thunderous sermons, now broadcast a tinny, echoing recording. It was the sound of a bathroom, the echo of tiles, the sound of running water. And then Marcus's voice, loud and clear, booming through the sanctuary. "Plan A failed. She did not drink it. My mother drank it. Yes, Beatrice, she is in the ER. She is psychotic." The congregation recoiled as if they had been physically struck. They looked at Beatrice sitting in her wheelchair on the stage. She was staring at the screen, her mouth open in a silent scream of denial. The audio continued. Marcus's voice was frantic, desperate. "I need that conservatorship, Arthur. If I do not get access to her accounts, I am dead. We will say she has been acting erratically. We will say she drugged my mother. I need that judge to sign off on a temporary hold by Monday morning." The murmurs started then, a low rumble of anger and disbelief that rolled through the pews like a tremor. These people knew Marcus. They had done business with him. They had trusted him. And now they were hearing him plot to imprison his wife to cover his own debts. Marcus looked around wildly. He saw the faces of his friends, his neighbors, his business partners. They were not looking at him with respect anymore. They were looking at him with revulsion. "Turn it off!" he screamed, lunging toward me. "You witch, turn it off!" I stepped back calmly, keeping the pulpit between us. I pressed the button a third time. Now the screen changed again. It was no longer a video. It was a spreadsheet. A series of bank statements. The font was large and bold. At the top of the document was the logo of the Ebenezer Baptist Church Charity Fund. The rumble in the congregation turned into a roar. This was their money. This was the fund they tithed into every Sunday, the fund that was supposed to build shelters and feed the hungry. I spoke into the microphone, my voice cutting through the rising noise. "You all know my father-in-law is the head deacon," I said. "You trust him with the treasury, and he trusted his son with the access codes. Marcus told you he was investing the surplus funds in low-risk bonds. He told you he was growing the kingdom's wealth." I pointed at the screen. The document scrolled. It showed a series of wire transfers. The dates corresponded to the last 2 years. The amounts were staggering. Transfer to Apex Coin Cayman Islands, $50,000. Transfer to MGM Grand Las Vegas, $25,000. Transfer to C. Miller Consulting, $5,000. Transfer to Dr. Stein Plastic Surgery, Buckhead, $20,000. The total amount at the bottom of the screen was highlighted in red. $500,000. $500,000 stolen from the church. Stolen from God. The sanctuary exploded. It was pandemonium. People were standing on the pews shouting. A man in the balcony threw his hymnal at the stage. It landed with a thud near Marcus's feet. "You thief," someone screamed. "You stole from the poor." Chloe's husband stood up in the third row. He was staring at the screen, staring at the line item for C. Miller Consulting. He looked at Chloe, who was shrinking into her seat, trying to make herself invisible. "Plastic surgery!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "You told me your parents paid for that. You told me it was an inheritance." Chloe burst into tears, burying her face in her hands. The circle of people around her widened, pulling away as if she were contagious. Marcus stood center stage, surrounded by the wreckage of his life. He looked at the screen where his crimes were listed in black and white. He looked at the congregation, which had turned into a mob. He looked at his father, the head deacon, who was clutching his chest in the front row, his face gray with shock and shame. And then he looked at his mother. Beatrice was staring at the screen. She was staring at the line items. She saw the money that should have gone to her status, to her legacy, squandered on gambling and her daughter-in-law's nose job. She saw the video of her son poisoning a drink that she drank. She realized in that moment that she was not the queen. She was the collateral damage. Her hand went to her chest. Her face turned a terrifying shade of purple. She let out a gasping, wheezing sound. It was not fake this time. It was not a performance for sympathy. "My chest," she gasped. "I cannot breathe." She slumped forward in the wheelchair, sliding sideways. She hit the floor of the stage with a heavy, sickening thud. Mother Marcus screamed. He ran to her, dropping to his knees. "Mom, wake up. Mom, get up." But Beatrice did not get up. Her eyes were rolled back in her head. Her breathing was shallow and ragged. "Call 911, someone shouted. "Is there a doctor in the house?" Several people rushed the stage. A doctor from the congregation began performing CPR. The chaos was absolute. The organist had stopped playing, but the hum of the screen still filled the room, broadcasting the evidence of the crime. I stood by the pulpit watching. I felt a strange detachment. I had not wanted Beatrice to die. I just wanted her to stop. But as I watched the paramedics rush through the back doors, pushing a gurney down the aisle, I realized that this was the cost of lies. The truth is heavy, and when you drop it on someone who has spent a lifetime building a house of cards, the collapse is total. The doors at the back of the sanctuary burst open again. But it wasn't paramedics this time. It was a squad of officers in tactical vests, followed by men in suits. The Atlanta Police Department and the Economic Crimes Unit. They moved with precision. They swarmed the stage. The lead detective, a man I had spoken with on the phone, walked straight up to Marcus, who was still kneeling beside his unconscious mother. "Marcus Washington," the detective said, his voice booming over the chaos. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, embezzlement, and fraud." Marcus looked up. Tears were streaming down his face, mixed with snot and sweat. He looked like a child. He looked pathetic. "My mother," he sobbed. "My mother is dying. You should have thought of that before you poisoned her," the detective said. He pulled Marcus to his feet. He spun him around and slapped the handcuffs on his wrists. The click of the metal was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. They dragged him away. He struggled, kicking and screaming, begging his father to help him, begging the pastor to intervene. But no one moved. The congregation watched in stony silence. They had seen the receipts. They had seen the video. There was no mercy left in this room. The paramedics loaded Beatrice onto the stretcher. They rushed her out the side exit. Her face was covered with an oxygen mask. I did not know if she would survive, and in that moment I realized I did not care. I looked at Chloe. She was sitting alone in the pew sobbing. Her husband had walked away. Her in-laws were refusing to look at her. She was wearing a 10-carat diamond bracelet on her wrist, a bracelet bought with stolen church funds. It glittered in the light, a shackle of her own making. I picked up the remote control. I pressed the power button. The screen went black. The evidence vanished, but the damage was done. The truth had been seared into the minds of everyone present. I gathered my purse. I smoothed my white dress. I walked down the steps of the pulpit. The path to the door was clear. People stepped back as I passed, giving me a wide berth. They looked at me with a mixture of fear and awe. I was not Simone, the poor girl from Bankhead, anymore. I was the woman who had brought down the temple. I walked out of the church into the blinding afternoon sun. The air smelled of exhaust and ozone. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs. It tasted like freedom. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from the airline. "Your flight to Paris departs in 3 hours." I smiled. I walked to my car, my heels clicking on the pavement. I did not look back. The sirens were fading in the distance. The show was over, and I had a plane to catch. The sanctuary of Ebenezer Baptist Church had transformed from a house of worship into a theater of judgment. The air was thick with the sounds of weeping and the heavy clinking of steel handcuffs. I stood near the altar, my white dress pristine amidst the chaos, watching the fall of the House of Washington. It was a slow-motion collapse, a crumbling of a monument built on sand and deceit. Marcus was on his knees, but not in prayer. 2 officers had him pinned to the plush red carpet. His white suit was stained with dust and sweat. He was sobbing, a guttural, ugly sound that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. He looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot and wide with disbelief. "Simone," he choked out. "Simone, tell them. Tell them it is a misunderstanding. Tell them I am your husband." I looked down at him. I felt a strange hollowness in my chest where my heart used to be. There was no pity there, only the cold satisfaction of a balanced ledger. "You were my husband, Marcus," I said, my voice low but carrying over his cries. "Now you are just a liability." The detective hauled him to his feet. Marcus struggled, his feet dragging on the floor as they marched him down the center aisle. The congregation recoiled from him, pulling their Sunday best away, as if his failure was contagious. The man who had walked in like a king was being dragged out like a common criminal. He shouted for his father. He shouted for the pastor. But no one moved. The evidence on the screen had been absolute. There was no defending him now. As the heavy oak doors swung shut behind the police escort, I turned my attention to the remaining players on the stage. Beatrice had been rushed out on a stretcher, but the rot she had cultivated remained. I saw movement in the third pew. Chloe was trying to make herself small, trying to slip into the shadow of a marble pillar near the side exit. She was clutching her purse to her chest, her knuckles white. She thought she could disappear in the confusion. She thought she could slide out the side door and go back to her life of luncheons and lies. She was wrong. David Marcus's younger brother stepped out from the pew, blocking her path. I had always liked David. He was quiet. He was a hard worker. He was the only one in the family who had treated me with basic decency, mostly because he was too busy working to engage in his mother's games. But right now, he did not look decent. He looked destroyed. Chloe froze. She looked up at her husband, her face a mask of terrified innocence. "David," she whispered, "David, we need to go. This is crazy. We need to get home to the kids." David did not move. He held up his phone. The screen was cracked, but the image on it was clear. It was the photo I had sent him 5 minutes ago. The photo of Chloe and Marcus at the Fontainebleau. The photo of his wife and his brother laughing over oysters paid for with stolen money. "Home." David repeated, his voice flat and dead. "There is no home, Chloe. Not for you." Chloe reached for him. "David, please. It is not what it looks like. Simone is lying. She doctored those photos." She is trying to tear us apart." David laughed. It was a harsh barking sound that made people flinch. "Do not lie to me. Not anymore. I saw the bank transfers, Chloe. I saw the consulting fees. 5,000 a month. That is what you cost. That is the price of your loyalty to me. $5,000 and a bracelet." He grabbed her wrist. He lifted her arm, displaying the diamond tennis bracelet that glittered under the church lights. It was the bracelet I had given her. The bracelet Marcus had bought with the money meant for the poor. "Take it off," David said. Chloe pulled back. "No, it is mine." "Take it off," David roared, his voice breaking. She knew I could put her in a cell next to Marcus if I chose. She turned and ran. She ran down the side aisle, her heels clattering on the stone floor. She burst through the side door and into the heat of the afternoon, leaving behind her marriage, her reputation, and the diamonds she had sold her soul for. The church was quiet now. The storm had passed, leaving only wreckage. I smoothed my dress and prepared to leave. I had done what I came to do. "Simone." The voice was weary and old. I stopped. Standing at the base of the pulpit steps was Deacon Washington, Marcus's father. He looked like he had aged 20 years in 20 minutes. His shoulders were slumped. His suit jacket hung loosely on his frame. He was clutching a Bible in one hand and his chest with the other. He was a proud man, a man who had built this church, who had built a legacy, and he had just watched his son burn it all down. I waited. I owed him nothing, but I would hear him out. "Simone," he said, his voice trembling. And I did not know. I looked at him. I believed him. He was a man who preferred not to know things. He preferred to let Beatrice run the house and Marcus run the business, while he shook hands and prayed over babies. His ignorance was his shield. But ignorance is not innocence. "You should have known, Deacon," I said softly. "You were the treasurer. You gave him the codes. You looked the other way when the numbers did not add up because it was easier than confronting your son." He hung his head. "I trusted him. He is my boy. He is a thief," I said. "And he is a predator. And you let him loose on me." Deacon Washington looked up, tears in his eyes. "I am so sorry, Simone. I am so sorry for what they did to you, for what Beatrice said, for the drugs. I had no idea it had gone this far. Please tell me what I can do. We can fix this. We can pay you back. I will sell the lake house. I will sell the cars. Just please do not destroy the family name. It is all I have left." I looked at this broken man. He was asking for mercy. He was asking me to stop the bleeding. He wanted to save the facade even now when the foundation was rot. I reached into my purse. I had one last envelope. It was not a divorce paper. It was not a police report. It was a deed. "I appreciate your apology, Deacon," I said, my voice cool. "But you cannot pay me back. You do not have the money." He frowned, confused. "What do you mean? We have assets. We have the estate." I pulled a document from the envelope and handed it to him. "I know about the estate," I said. "I know that Marcus took out a second mortgage on your home 3 years ago. I know he forged your signature just like he forged mine. I know the bank was about to foreclose next week because he hasn't made a payment in 6 months." Deacon Washington stared at the paper. His hands shook so hard the paper rattled. "Foreclose? No, that house is paid for." "It was paid for," I corrected, "until your son gambled it away on cryptocurrency and high living. I had taken the bricks they threw at me and built a fortress they could not enter." I checked my phone. I had a notification from my bank. The transfer was complete. The insurance policy had been canceled and the cash value deposited. The sale of the debt was finalized. I was free, and they were destitute. I got into my car and adjusted the mirror. I looked at my reflection. I did not see a victim. I saw a CEO. I saw a survivor. I started the engine. I had a plane to catch. Paris was waiting, and I intended to drink champagne from my own glass. The Fulton County Jail smelled of industrial bleach and the sour sweat of men who knew they had reached the end of the line. I sat in the visitation room on a metal stool bolted to the floor. The air conditioning was broken and the air was thick and humid. I checked my reflection in the plexiglass divider. My makeup was flawless. My hair was perfect. I looked like a woman who had just won the lottery because, in a way, I had. The heavy steel door on the other side of the glass buzzed and clicked open. A guard led Marcus into the room. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. His head was shaved. The expensive haircut and the tailored suits were gone, replaced by the uniform of the state. He looked smaller. He looked like a man who had been deflated. He sat down and picked up the phone receiver. His hands were shaking. I picked up mine. "Simone," he said, his voice cracking. "You came. I knew you would come. You have to get me out of here. The lawyer says the bail is set at $2 million. You have the money. You can pay it." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had tried to drug me into submission. I looked at the man who had stolen from the church and from me. "I do not have the money, Marcus," I said calmly. "I sold the firm yesterday. The assets are in a trust now, a trust you cannot touch. And even if I did have the money, I would not spend a dime of it on you." He started to cry. I leaned forward too. My face was inches from his, separated only by the scratched plastic. "Do not worry, Marcus," I said, my voice soft and cold. "You are not going to die. I made sure of it." He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I canceled the life insurance policy," I said. "The one you took out on me, and the one you took out on yourself." He blinked, confused. "Why?" "Because you are worth more to me alive," I said. "If you die, it is over. You escape. You get the easy way out. But if you live, you have to pay. You have to sit in a cell for 20 years and think about every dollar you stole. You have to work in the prison laundry for 12 cents an hour and send me restitution checks for the rest of your natural life." I smiled. "I want you to live a long time, Marcus. I want you to live until you are very old. I want you to remember every champagne toast. I want you to remember the taste of the good life you threw away. I want you to rot slowly." His face crumbled. Beatrice was sitting in a wheelchair by the window, staring out at a brick wall. She looked frail. The stroke she suffered at the church had left her left side weak. Her face drooped slightly. She was wearing a faded hospital gown. Her pearls were gone. Her Chanel suit was gone. She looked like exactly what she was. An old woman with nothing left. I walked in. She turned her head slowly. When she saw me, her eyes widened. For a moment, I saw a flash of the old fire, the old arrogance, but it faded quickly, replaced by fear. "Simone," she rasped. Her voice was slurred. "Hello, Mother," I said. "I brought you something." I placed a small bag of toiletries on the bed. Cheap soap, toothpaste, the basics. It was charity, and it burned her more than cruelty ever could. "Why are you here?" she asked. "To gloat?" "No," I said. "I came to see if you were comfortable." She let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "Comfortable? Look at this place. It is a rat hole. Get me out of here, Simone." There was a plastic pitcher of lukewarm water and a small carton of orange juice. I picked up the orange juice. I shook it. I peeled back the foil tab. I poured the bright yellow liquid into a plastic cup. The color was vibrant against the gray of the room. I held the cup out to her. Her hand reached for it, trembling. Her fingers were knobby and arthritic. She grabbed the cup. She lifted it to her lips. She was desperate for it. Then I spoke. "Drink it, Mother," I said, my voice smooth and pleasant. "It is just juice, I promise." She froze. The cup hovered an inch from her mouth. She looked at the juice. Then she looked at me. I leaned in closer. My eyes locked onto hers. "I swear there is nothing in it," I whispered. "Unless, maybe you want to switch cups with me, like at the restaurant. Remember?" Her eyes went wide with terror. The memory of the scopolamine, the hallucinations, the spiders, the loss of control, it all came rushing back. She saw the devil in my eyes. Oh, wait, she is living in a motel in Alabama. I walked out of the room. I walked down the hallway, past the nurse's station, past the apathy and the decay. I walked out into the parking lot. The sun was setting. The sky was a brilliant streak of purple and orange. It reminded me of the painting Marcus had bought me on our first date. The painting I had burned in the fireplace before I sold the house. I got into my car. I checked my phone. My flight to Paris left in 4 hours. First class. One way. I started the engine. I felt light. I felt clean. The debt was paid. The ledger was closed. I drove away from the nursing home, leaving the past in the rearview mirror. I did not feel guilty. I did not feel sad. I felt like a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side not as ash, but as gold. I turned onto the highway and pressed the accelerator. The future was waiting, and it tasted like champagne, pure cold and safe. I stripped the name Washington from everything. I went back to my maiden name. I went back to being Simone Davis. It felt like putting on a comfortable pair of jeans after wearing a corset for 5 years. I could breathe again. But I did not just keep the money. Money without purpose is just paper. I wanted to make sure that the fortune Marcus had tried to steal did something good. I wanted to balance the cosmic ledger. Beatrice had spent her life looking down on girls from my neighborhood. She had spent her life trying to keep people like me out of her world. So I decided to build a door that she could never close. I established the Simone Davis Scholarship for Future Leaders. It was fully endowed. It would pay for 4 years of university tuition for girls from Bankhead. Girls who were smart and hungry and tired of being told they did not belong. I went to the high school myself to announce it. I stood in the auditorium where I used to sit and dream of escaping. He had been assigned to the kitchen crew washing dishes for 12 hours a day. It seemed fitting. He was finally learning the value of hard work. Beatrice was still in the state facility. I heard from a nurse that she spent her days staring out the window muttering about her pearls. She had not had a visitor in months. Her friends, the society ladies she had cultivated for decades, had abandoned her the moment the scandal broke. They were like rats fleeing a sinking ship. She was alone with her memories and her bitterness. It was a prison of her own making. Chloe had vanished. The last I heard, she was working as a hostess in a dive bar in Alabama trying to find another man to save her. She would not find one. Not with her face plastered all over the internet as a co-conspirator in a fraud case. She had traded her integrity for a bracelet she no longer owned. With the past buried, I turned my eyes to the horizon. I had always wanted to travel. I pick it up. It is a notification from my private bank in Switzerland. I open the app. The interface is clean and simple. Transaction complete. Sale of MW Holdings assets finalized. Insurance cash value deposited. Judgment restitution received. I look at the balance. The numbers are crisp and black against the white screen. $9,200,000. I stare at the number. It is a lot of money. It is enough money to live here forever if I wanted to. It is enough money to start a new company. It is enough money to never have to answer to anyone ever again. But it is not just money. It is a score. It is the final tally of the war. Marcus had wanted 5 million. He had been willing to kill my mind to get it. He had lost everything. And I had walked away with nearly double what he had coveted. I put the phone down. I look out at the horizon where the sun is beginning to dip into the water, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. It reminds me of the bruises on my heart when I first found out the truth. But those bruises have healed. Now they are just scars, and scars are just proof that you survived. I think about the night at the restaurant. I think about the moment I saw him pour the powder. I think about the split-second decision to switch the glasses. It was a reflex. It was instinct. But it was also something else. It was an understanding of who I am and who they are. They looked at me and they saw a victim. They saw a woman from the wrong side of the tracks who should be grateful just to be at the table. They thought I was desperate for their approval. They thought I would do anything to keep the name Washington. They thought I was a sheep that could be sheared and slaughtered without a fight. They thought I was soft. They thought I was stupid. They forgot where I came from. They forgot that you do not get out of poverty by being soft. You get out by being observant. You get out by being faster and smarter than the things that want to eat you. They thought I was the lamb in the den of wolves. They thought they could surround me and devour me at their leisure. They forgot the most important rule of nature. A lamb does not drink with the devil. A lamb runs. But I did not run. I stayed. I sat at their table. I ate their food. I smiled at their insults. And when they tried to bite, I showed them that I was not a lamb at all. I was the lion they never saw coming. I pick up my glass of tea. I raise it to the setting sun. To the future I whisper. I drink. It is cool and sweet and safe. The sun disappears below the water. The stars begin to come out one by one. I am alone in the middle of the ocean. But I am not lonely. I am full. I am whole. And I am rich. I close my eyes and listen to the ocean. It sounds like applause. This story teaches us that our true worth is never defined by the approval of those who seek to diminish us. Simone's journey reveals that silence isn't weakness. Often, it is a strategic pause to gather the strength and evidence needed for justice. We learn that family must be built on respect, not just bloodlines. When toxic dynamics threaten our survival, the most powerful move is to protect ourselves unapologetically through financial independence and ironclad boundaries. Ultimately, we must be our own saviors, possessing the courage to walk away from tables where love is no longer served. Have you ever had to outsmart a toxic family member to protect your peace? Share your experience in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more satisfying stories of justice served cold.